Okay, and we're live.
Hey.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to Hackaday 15 years old celebration.
Yay.
We have some folks that we're going to...
Almost can get a driver's license.
Yeah, we have some folks here, some from current Hackaday, past Hackaday, and more. I'm Phil. I founded Hackaday,
Hackaday
15 years ago and made the logo, and I did some things to the site to keep it all lowercase. That's been changed.
That's gone.
And then let's start in the virtual world, starting at the upper right here. Mike, who are you?
Mike, who are you?
What do you do?
Hi, I'm Mike Stish. I'm the editor-in-chief of Hackaday.
Okay.
Okay.
Brian?
Benshoff, formerly of Hackaday.
All right.
That's Supplyframe, which is like the sister company.
Yeah.
All right. Caleb?
And I'm Caleb Kraft. Currently I'm at Make, but I ran Hackaday for a period during an extreme transition right up to when Supplyframe purchased it.
All right. So...
And Sophie, of course. Most important, not...
Yeah.
You're like, I was like, you're quiet, you're going live, but now you're like, I'm going to be so quiet.
You're not virtual. You're actually
I'm
here.
right here. I'm Sophie. I do a lot of things at Hackaday and Supplyframe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different things.
Hackaday Prize, everything, events.
Who are you?
Hi, I'm Lady Ada Lamore. So I had no point in time that I run Hackaday, thank God. But I am with Mr. Lady Ada, who I sent you a bunch of good links when you were first doing Hackaday.
That's right.
I definitely was like, check out this cool stuff, and you would post it, and it'd be like, yeah. And
your electronics are featured on Hackaday.
I was one of the first posts on Hackaday. I think I was like post number like 50.
Yeah.
You posted my mini pop. So like I'm early, and I remember reading the site for a while. So I'm here as an observer.
Okay. Well, what I thought we'd do is talk about a little bit about the origins of Hackaday. Folks can ask questions in
at the YouTube,
in any of the chats, and then also Discord.
Discord.
On YouTube, if you put a good question, we might bubble it up. For example,
Thomas says, "Happy birthday, Hackaday!"
Happy birthday, Hackaday!
Yay, Thomas!
Yay! Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Got that going on. All right. So it was 15 years ago. And,
so where were you 15 years ago?
Yeah, well, I'm going to ask everybody later, but it was 15 years ago, and Peter Rojas had left Gizmodo, and he started Engadget. And I started writing some articles. I think I was the first author on Engadget. I had left
you were
previous
doing
life.
Like Watch Wednesdays and stuff.
Yeah, I was working at a creative firm called Fallon, and we did like Super Bowl commercials and crazy things with like cars and Sony and all sorts of stuff. I got to work with the IBO and the Curio and all that, but I was kind of done with that world. And so I was writing at Popular Science for the How 2.0 section, started doing writing on Engadget, and the Watch This Wednesday and the How To Tuesday started to take off. And we're like, well, maybe we should turn this into a site. What do you want to do? And I said, I have a terrible idea. Let's make the site all black. Let's have it all lowercase, and let's make like a hacking site. And at the time, there was like a race to do a bunch of blogging. So it was Weblogs Inc.
At the time, it was like all about life hacking, right?
Well, there was just like, how many blogs can you get in a blog network?
Yeah.
And this was one that was the Gawker verse Engadget world. So it was Weblogs Inc. and the entire Gawker world. And one of the things that was happening, there was a lot of cookie cutter sites, and some of them were still out there. So there was the Apple blog, there was
like
Joystick, there was a few, like they were trying to find like every single topic would have.
You have to have like a fashion blog, you have to have like
and they would figure out if they work out.
And then have a technology and how-to blog.
Yeah.
And so Hackaday was that.
Well, what happened was the how-to became the most popular things on the site. So they were like a little nervous about that. And they're like, well, this sounds like a really good deal. So come up with something. So I came up with this skull logo, which is now called the Jolly Rancher. I didn't call it Jolly Rancher.
What did you call it?
Jolly Rancher, sorry. I just said like skull. I don't know, skull. And back in the day, I wrote a few books about Macromedia Flash. So I designed the logo in Flash. So I still have the .fla file, which is a weird format. Yeah, I know, right? And so after we started this, we started to put some blog posts up, and I said I want to have black and white photos, and I wanted to have like little pieces of tape on it, and everything should be lowercase, because I think that would keep everyone super chill. And also it kind of looked neat. Plus, I only type in lowercase when I'm allowed to.
Well, if there was people like they try to like post really angry comments, but like the all caps are converted to lowercase.
Yeah. In fact, when you type in all caps, why is everything lowercase? Question mark, question mark. What's in all lowercase? It's kind of cute. Lowercase. It actually sounds nice.
Yeah.
We have some more comments.
Yeah.
What's up, Blake? Oh,
Okay.
Adam's here.
Adam's
And
here, John.
Yeah, we'll do a
is
couple
here.
more,
Happy
so-
15th.
Yeah.
Hello, Hackaday. Happy birthday. And didn't realize Hackaday was 15.
So I think I started putting posts on the site in August and then September, and somewhere around we had to put enough posts on it so when it launched, it would have okay, cool, I can scroll and do some stuff. So I have some screenshots, and I'll put this on the screen real quick here. And this is I put them up on the blog post I did today. So here's the very first post that was kind of live to the world. It was run Mac OS 10 on your Xbox. And that was October 8th, 2004. But the first post was the Radio Shack phone dialer, which I still have somewhere around here. Because I thought that was something that when I was a kid, I got started in hacking by...
I had one of these.
Yeah, we all did.
Oh my God, it was called the Chinger, right?
You put a little oscillator in it, and then you can put it up to a phone.
I totally had one of these.
And later on in life, I was writing for 2600, and that kind of also gave me the idea for it'd be neat to have a website, because 2600 still is just mostly a zine and mostly a radio show. It's not a blog that you go to every day to find stuff. And then later on, Adafruit and Hackaday did some stuff. There's some hardware, some branded hardware, and I'll talk about some of the ideas that I have. I have my to-do list so I have every email for the last 20-something years, which is not a good idea. But it's only it's just stuff that if anything ever happened, I'd be okay with it. So I have my to-do list from 15 years ago for what I was supposed to do once we launched the site. So we could talk about that later. Some of the stuff Hackaday did, and then some of the stuff Make did, and some of the stuff Adafruit did. So a lot of the stuff is happening actually. Done. Yeah, and actually some of the stuff DigiKey's doing. So we're getting there. It doesn't really matter. And there's also Hackster and Instructables and a lot of cool communities that do stuff. So I think it doesn't matter if you personally get to do stuff. It matters, do you have a place for lots of people to do stuff? And it looks like Hackaday is one of those places. So that's what happened 15 years ago. And we debuted it, and one of the first things I kind of thought was funny was Nick Denton was the competitor to Gawker, to Weblogs Inc. and all that. And he was recently in the news, or not too long ago, for the Hulk Hogan thing, and Gawker's out of they had to sacrifice Gawker. But he said, I really like the site because it's unlike all the rest of the sites. So fast forward a little bit, when Weblogs Inc. was trying to sell the blog network, that's when I said it's probably time for me to retire, because I didn't want to end up pitching and hey, please sell this thing. And I had a feeling it would be AOL, and it was AOL. I really didn't want to work for AOL. So that's when I decided it's probably time for me to do something else. And that's when I said, I should probably do this. It wasn't called Make Magazine at the time. It was just we're going to do a magazine. And I'm that's a terrible idea. So they liked Hackaday, I said magazine. And I never worked on the magazine side, really. I just thought I want to do another website about things that people are making. So what happened was AOL acquired everything, and this is from what I'm told, they said it's too much of a liability to buy Hackaday. So
they're committing crimes.
So Jason Kalkanis, and he's one of the ones on my to-do list here that I was emailing with, said, okay, well, we'll just do something else with it. And then we'll bring in Caleb in a bit for his part of the story. But that's why I decided, it's probably time for me to bail, because I just didn't see a future where I would be doing stuff at AOL.
Because it's either you have to do AOL CD hacks every day, or you're never allowed to do AOL.
No, they would have probably had me work on other things, because I brought in a lot of traffic, and I'm just you know what? I just got out of a business because I was good at it. Yeah. And the advertising world, I want to keep going to things that I think aren't going to work out. To maybe because you could be an underdog and be creative and all that. So that's the history behind it. So now it's been 15 years, and I thought maybe we could start next with Caleb and talk about how you got involved.
Sure.
Yeah, and then we'll go to Mike and Brian and Sophie and maybe talk about what's currently happening, and then we'll skip to what do we want to do for the next 15 years before we're all 60 or 70.
So 15 years ago, I owned a computer arcade, or a LAN center, like a cyber cafe kind of thing. So Brian, I was throwing competitions on that. I got to help test out the Source engine for Valve. We got to have Counter-Strike Source before the public did, and we got to test it out. It was really cool. But that, along with my web design agency, tanked and bankrupted me, and it was a nightmare. And Hackaday ended up being my outlet for all those frustrations around 2008. I wanted an outlet. I started writing. I reached out to Elliot Phillips, who was running the site during that time, and he hired me. I suspect he hired me because he just didn't care anymore, because he was kind of under the boot of some of the things on his shoulders at the time.
Well, it got turned into a Mahalo site. So you want me to fill that in a little bit?
Well, I can get into that in a minute.
Way better.
Because we don't have a non-disparagement. You know what I mean? We can say whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to speak for Elliot is all. So I'll get into it after that.
Yeah.
So Elliot kind of reduced his influence more and more, and I was given directives like we're going to move from 1 post a day to multiple posts a day for more traffic, and that was my job.
Well, that's innovation.
They were asking me, what would you do to broaden the audience a bit on this? And I wanted to keep everything as it was, except I wanted color in the images. You had a script, or maybe we did it manually. I don't remember, but all the images were black and white.
Since then, it's been downhill.
There was a little bit of both, because I had to make a template thing. It'd be easier now with like modern web tools. But
and then from the moment that I switched it to color on the images, the comments started that everything was going downhill and I was ruining Hackaday. Things went on that way with just me and maybe a couple other freelancers for a short while, and then Elliot was going to move on, and I pitched moving up, and there was a kind of interim period where another guy kind of ran it with me, but all he did was collected a paycheck. And all this time, I had only spoken with Jason Calacanis maybe once or twice by email. So at this point, I had been working there over a year, and I had just gotten like maybe an email of, so you exist kind of thing. And Elliot was gone. And finally, I don't remember the timeline if I had already hired you. I didn't hire you. Elliot hired you.
Elliot hired me. Yeah.
You usually correct me on that because I say it wrong. I don't remember if how the timeline worked out, but I ended up finally stepping up and like asking to run the site instead of just kind of half-assed kind of keeping it alive. And that's when Jason Calacanis, the owner, really stepped in. Now, people who aren't aware, he had no interest in Hackaday in terms of the content and the community. He's a businessman who does other things, and you can look him up and see what other stuff he does. But Hackaday to him was just an investment. So he wanted to inflate it and sell it. And I was given directives that started getting crazier and crazier on growth that I had to get. And we got a lot of growth. We started pushing the YouTube channel. We started pushing more and more and more content. Mike Stish was my lead content producer, pumping out nonstop content like a machine. And at one point, I think we had 15 or 20 people contributing. I don't recall directly. But anyway, the directives got more and more extreme to the point that at one point I was given something like, I don't know if you remember, Mike, it was like 60 or 90 days to double or triple our profits and viewers. And
I'm glad I wasn't part of that deadline. That's rough.
Well, for a while, I put up with it. At one point, I got an email, fire everybody today. We did. And then like a week later, Jason was upset because traffic was down. And so we kind of brought some people back on. I think, Mike, you actually emailed him directly and pitched why you should be one of the people hired back on.
Actually, I wasn't. I was the one that was kept on.
You were kept on?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe that was a result.
Inspire everybody but Mike today.
Yeah, I think Caleb advocated for me and said, "There's nothing's going to get written if Mike's not around." And so, thank you for that. That was very good.
So, after these extreme directives, at one point he made a comment about, if you can't make these growths, I don't see why I have you here. And something switched in my mind. I was like, wait a minute, you have this relationship backwards. So I'm just going to quit. The end. And I wrote a post and quit. And I talked with Adafruit. You guys were going to hire me.
That's right.
I ended up getting another offer that was a whole lot more money that didn't work out great in the end. But anyway, it was a whole lot more money. So you guys were gracious enough to say, like, go get your money and we'll talk later. But yeah, I quit Hackaday. And at that point is when the talks started happening with Supplyframe.
Yeah, and just to be fair, so if you know Jason Calcanis, this is all normal, by the way. It's like a pet shark. It's like, ow, pet shark bit me. It's like you have a pet shark. So like when I left, he sent over paperwork and he was going to sue me for $2 million because he's like, I don't want you to leave, so I'm going to sue you. And I have it. It's super cute, but it's not real. Like he's like, are you signed a thing? And I'm like, that's not my name or my signature. Like it's just like super like Silicon Valley crazy
Where
stuff.
is he now?
I think he just like he's an investor.
He
has
tried
his
to
own
run
podcast.
for governor or mayor of California.
Yeah, it's like serial entrepreneur. This is what it's like. So I never took it personal. That was one of the reasons I retired out, because I'm like, I didn't want to be in this situation where like that was all going on. Plus I was a big traffic driver and just like, and I could do those things like double, triple, cool. But I wanted to do that for like the right reasons, not for like, oh, we have a video game site and like or like a cooking site. Like I don't want to.
One of the directives was I was supposed to turn it into makeup hacks because that was true.
Yeah.
No, I know.
And
that's what I didn't want to do.
All kinds of crazy directives like that from
Yeah.
Now I will say something positive about Jason, just because I like to get something positive out there about anybody. It was so
Nice
nice giving ideas to Jason, because he would say, "No, that's not going to work. Forget about it," or "Okay, yes, we'll try it. Get me a hit list and get me a budget." And that was it. There was no hums and haws and maybe.
Yeah.
He was a decision maker.
I was going to say, to be fair, that's how Hackaday essentially started. I'm like, hey, like, let's do a site, Hackaday. And then I think Jason was like, oh, we should do a bunch of a day sites. So it was like cooking a day and like painting a day. And I'm just like, no, like, I just want to do Hackaday. And then,
Oh, that's so funny. That's how it started.
That was one of he had a bunch of these domains. And he also
And then what
did.
was the definition of a hack at that time?
Well, he didn't care about that.
That wasn't about that. It was about, like,
it was about how many blog posts you can get up per day.
No, it was about eyeballs. This was eyeballs land.
And so one of the things that happened too was I think Jason bought Netscape or part of the assets, and there was this thing called Mahalo, and Mahalo was a search engine or a destination. It had something to do with Netscape.
Like a portal or something.
And he bought it. And during one of the periods of Hackaday, all the links started getting changed. So if you were to write about Nokia, instead of it going to like Nokia site, it would go to mahalo.com/Nokia. And I think in 2013, I want to say 2013, I don't know when it was, but like the Google and the SEO people were like, stop doing this. This is not.
The Panda update happened, and then it kind of killed it.
So it was like 2010, I think, and it was catastrophic. Like everybody
got good too, right?
But then what was neat is the site kind of reset, and then it did what it normally did, which is like, here's a bunch of cool projects and hacks and stuff like that. And then Jason posted up like, hey, I want to find a good home for it. I was thinking of purchasing it. I was like, well, but I already did that. And I'm like, I already like blog on Adafruit, and I already did the make blog. I'm just like, why would I do that? And then when I saw Supplyframe got it, I thought that was a good home, because I'm like, okay, they're in the biz. That makes a lot of sense. So fast forward. So Caleb, do you have any other things? I feel like this is a little bit of a therapy session for you. Sorry I invited you to do this, but
no, that's all right. No, I feel like I could go on all kinds of long-winded stories about the trials
synopsis.
during that period, but I won't. I think that's a good enough synopsis.
I think that's a good overview. Also, this is like how it was like, this was blogging in the like early 2000s. Like it was Wild West. Everyone was doing blogs, and I'm really happy that Hackaday is still around. Not every site is. And Gadget's still around. Gizmodo's still around.
And
definitely changed what they are.
Like a lot of people have written for Hackaday. Like it's kind of surprised if you look at the blog roll historically. There's like 50 or 60 people all doing really cool stuff now.
Yeah.
Who at some time or in their career path they wrote for Hackaday.
Yeah.
Very common.
Okay, so today, Mike, you posted up kind of a nice overview. I like metrics and numbers and stats myself, so I like that you put lots of things like how many posts and how long you've been doing stuff. So you've been running the site with the team for a while. What's been going on since we handed you the keys to this hacked up car?
So yeah, Caleb went off to find his fame and fortune, and Supplyframe came into the picture. I'd never heard of them before. It was actually the CEO, Steve Flagg, who called and was like, hey, Caleb said that you should run this thing. And I was like, ooh, I don't know. It's been kind of a bad year. And he was just very persistent. We kept talking about the things that they liked. And one of the things that I keyed in on was that they said they really wanted to support open hardware, which is, I think, kind of the heart and soul of the Hackaday community is like, hey, let's all learn about hardware. Let's all learn about engineering, but let's all share and talk about what we're learning. And I think that's very important. And so I said, hey, I'll give you 20, 30 hours a week. And then it just went amazingly well. Within like a month, I was working full time. We were hiring a ton of new writers and doing really great content. For the first time, we had pretty reasonable budgets for getting projects. And I think it was the first time we started to have some travel budgets, which was amazing. That was maybe the first, that would have been the first time I'd gone to Maker Faire Bay Area, was Supplyframe said, hey, let's go there, and had a ton of fun doing it. And along the way, they were asking about what we thought we could do best for the community. And we said, project hosting would be really important, giving people a persistent place to kind of write about what they're doing and then be able to talk back and forth with each other that is like connected with the Hackaday community. That was 6 weeks between that conversation. And then the CTO, Alexander Bradish, said, hey, I have something to show you. And they showed us the first alpha version of Hackaday.io, and it was really awesome. That launched. So they bought the site in July of 2013, and Hackaday.io started in, I'd say, midwinter, 4 months later, 6 months later. And it's gone like crazy ever since.
So as far as the timeline, did Brian join or did Sophie join first?
Brian,
Oh, definitely Brian.
Okay. All right. So Brian, how did you come into this?
Yeah. So
what were you doing 15 years ago too?
what I was doing 15 years ago? Yeah, I was working for the Kerry campaign, but that's fine because Hunter S. Thompson can only kill himself once.
what?
The Kerry campaign.
It's fine. It's a suicide joke.
Yeah.
Kerry, remember he ran for president?
Oh, that Kerry campaign.
Yeah.
You're political, Brian? Okay, never mind. Moving on.
He's a wonk, can't you tell?
Anyway, okay. I think one of the rounds where Caleb was looking for writers, he just put something up somewhere, right? Like, what was that, Reddit or something? It's like, hey, hey, we need some writers for that's so cool. And because, I remember being really depressed and reading all of Hackaday at 3 a.m.
Have things really changed? I mean, are you describing last night or just 15 years ago?
Oh, this is 15 years ago.
Okay.
All right. So you decided, let me take this feeling and bring it to a wider audience.
It's like one of my life goals was to have something on the front page of Hackaday, and then it happened every day, and it got Anyway,
Yeah.
But Caleb put something up somewhere. It's like, hey, we need writers for Hackaday. It's like, what? That's fucking cool. I can do that maybe. So I started doing that, and I started writing, and then Jason Calcanes happened. I would like to add.
It is like the weather. He is like the weather. That's how I'm just sometimes the weather is weird.
The best line for him is that he hosts the immaculately named Twit podcast.
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah, him and Leo Laporte got in.
It was a big
They
fight.
got in a super fight because he had this week in startups, and he had and Leo has this week in tech.
And then, of course, then he's like, okay, this weekend, hack a day, just like
Yeah.
this.
It's nothing better than seeing two dudes argue about podcast stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. Somebody just on the YouTube, somebody just put his Wikipedia. Yeah, man. Yeah, that dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
All right, so you started writing on the site, and what were you? Were you able to write about some of these things? Did you do electronics? Do some coding? What was your
Just do electronics, coding, write about everything, really. Which I actually, if I had to pick a favorite, it's always the one weird off mechanical builds, right? Because there's somebody on YouTube that's been building a 60-foot sailboat in their driveway in Oklahoma for the last decade. It's that's amazing.
Yeah. Do they know the landlocked? Maybe not. I don't know.
I'll tell you some of the genesis of the site, and this carried over to Make, and it carried over to other things. I thought that a lot of this was going on. People were always making things. that's not new, but a place where people can go and see all of these things and use something like the internet to search for it.
Yeah.
And then you start to see these communities, like the sailing community that probably watches that 10-year-long project, whatever, they eventually need electronics, and like vice versa. So there's a lot, there's not like one way to find someone who might be interested in what you're doing. There's easy ways to complain online and like tweet at people, but there's not a place where you could be like, oh, that's cool, or like, let me search for that. And the way like Google works, and when you type in a search engine, it's really difficult to find stuff. And the only thing I could think of is like, well, if we curate it in some way and do a little bit of work, it'll be easier for people to connect up together. So, okay, that sounds good, Brian. It looks like you found something you were interested in.
Yeah, and then lived through the Calcanis days, and then Supplyframe bought us, and then what was it? Yeah, like 5 years ago. I flew out to LA. Hey, we're doing a 10th anniversary party. Woo, that's cool. Neat. And then that was great. The Supplyframe's been great. The Hackaday.io just happened. I have no idea how that happened.
Well, I think like day by day, right? It's like slowly but surely it gets better. More people use it. Now it's like the destination for hardware sharing.
Just the thing was done. Oh, okay. We'll do that.
I also think there's other things that came up where, so Instructables was around, then they got bought by Autodesk. Make tried a couple of times over the years to have like project sites. Hackster came along, but that's owned by Avnet. There's also Dazuki, which is the system that runs iFixit. And then we made learn.adafruit.com specifically for like our products, and no one can just post whatever they want. It's actually authors. But I have seen over time where if you build something where people can share their projects, they'll do it. But you do have to kind of keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Like there's times where if it's like Instructables is very contest heavy, and eventually people are like, you know what, like I don't want to enter a contest. And so they'll find another place where it's very specific to electronics.
Yep.
They'll probably go to Hackaday.io or something like Hackster.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a challenge when some of these bigger electronic companies start to buy some of these things. So like Avnet owns Hackster.
Yep.
So I'm hoping there's never going to be a time where the electronic companies determine the content. So I think everyone's done a good job with what's going on so far.
That's been really important and really key through the years with Supplyframe, is that they've given us editorial independence. And so we do have the freedom to post about and talk about what they want. And they've been very community driven on the project hosting website, where it is the people that are on the site that are building the things and talking about the things that are really guiding us and driving that lifeblood. And I couldn't be happier with the way that that's gone down.
Yeah, the thing I was worried about was editorial independence, and that's why I'm like, if it's AOL, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it, even before that wave was coming. So I'm like, you know what? Like, I could do other things. And at Make, I could write about anything I wanted as well. So I think that's one of the like lessons learned. And if folks are thinking of doing a community site or something like a Hackaday, whatever you do is build in a way for the editors to always be independent, and for the people who are sharing stuff not to have to do something specific because of who owns the thing.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay. So you got anything else, Brian, before I move on to Sophie?
No.
Okay, so we'll keep doing this. All right, Sophie, how did you come across?
Sufficient. Come closer. Come closer. I don't bite. I mean, I do, but only if you ask.
Nice. How did I come here? Well, I knew Brian for a pretty long time from Maker Fairs, and probably since about, I don't even know, maybe like 2011, 2012. I might have known Mike too, sort of peripherally. And in 2014, I ran into Brian at Hope, and he persuaded me to enter the Hackaday Prize. And at that time, I was an engineering consultant. I had my own consulting company. And then in 2015, Mike posted an ad for someone to run the Hackaday Prize, and I was like, oh, I could probably do that.
Did you enter the Hackaday Prize?
2014, I entered.
Okay. Is the prize you get a job at Hackaday?
Yeah.
And then 2015, I got a job.
First prize you get a job.
Well, he knows what experience is like.
So sick.
Yeah.
Sophie, how did you apply for that job?
I think I sent it to you or to Hackaday, a picture. I tweeted a unicorn.
A unicorn farting a rainbow, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Classic meme.
Yeah, something like
Well,
that.
did it work?
It did.
So then
Yeah,
they know.
I think there were no words or anything. It was like the only person that didn't send something boring sent something awesome, and it was
Yeah.
Sophie.
A lot of business books say that now.
Like
They-
send a picture of a unicorn farting a
Yep.
rainbow.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Mike and I had a call, and then I talked to some other people at Supplyframe, and within like a couple of weeks, I was on board. It was pretty fast. So I'm almost at 5 years,
Okay.
and I've been working on a bunch of.
So you
different
came in
things.
around the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, I
And
came in
Hackaday
right
IO was
after.
around, and
Yep.
Hackaday Prize was around because you
Yeah.
entered it, and then later on
Yep.
you helped run it.
Yep.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So that was like, I came a year after Hackaday IO had started, and a year after Hackaday Prize had started,
Got it.
and that was the year we started Supercon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did Supercon come about?
A Supercon started. The first conversation was me and our CTO Alexander Bradish, and we were talking about hardware conferences. Basically, like that thing about not having editorial independence, just having a lot of
Yeah.
content that's very salesy and driven by the companies that are supporting the conferences. So we decided we wanted to have a conference that didn't have any sponsors or any sponsors that were driving the content. And then Chris Gamble and I had also been talking about, Chris Gamble used to work at Supplyframe. We've been
Yeah.
talking about this for a while, kind of fantasizing about the conference that we wanted.
Yeah.
And then boom, we got, Supplyframe was like, all right, we'll fund this thing, make it happen. And
Yeah.
so,
Making your dreams come
Well,
true.
yeah,
at the
One
time-
short unicorn at a time.
Well, at the time, and also even over the last 15 years, like, so tech conferences, they're really boring. And it was just like a bunch of dudes talking about like programming, and like you couldn't do anything. And then Maker Faire came along, and that was great. But then it got really big, and it's like 150,000 people. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And I helped run the first one, second one, I think maybe 4 or 5 or 6 of them. And then when I saw Supplyframe, I'm like, yeah, like this is exactly what you want to see. After a community gets to a certain point, lots of more specific.
Yeah. It's a little bit more engineering than Hope.
Yeah,
but less-
Hope was Hope was
less
the last couple of
playing
years, and it was like maybe they're gonna
technique.
have it, maybe they weren't.
Yeah.
DEF CON, you have to really be in the DEF CON
Real
to do DEF
security
CON.
focused.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
but there
was
wasn't.
amazing.
Yeah, there wasn't really any like hardware specific
Yeah.
events. You could kind of like pick and choose within.
There's
Maker
open
Faire.
hardware, but it's also,
Yeah,
it has
Open
more to do
Hardware
with,
Summit
like,
wasn't
the
around yet.
social and political
For sure.
aspects.
And Supercon is really, it's a hardware conference.
It's like hardware hacking.
Yeah.
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 Okay. And offhand, does anyone remember anything like how many attendees were at the last Supercon or anything?
400.
400.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Over 400. I say we oversold by at least 10% on that.
We did, but 400 attendees and then 100 more volunteers, staff,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think it's really precious because we can't get any bigger with that venue, which I
Right.
think is perfect, because that is one of the things that I think is a huge challenge is like, what if we want to have 2x or 5x or 10x the people?
Mhm.
It's very difficult to keep your culture. And so I'd love to sell more tickets and get more people in there, but it's been working really well for many years now.
Yeah, one of the things that I think you could say this for microcontrollers too. Constraints are good.
Mhm.
It makes you more creative.
Yeah.
Like you could do a lot with a microcontroller because you can't do everything. Like it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, I can only do this, so I better really focus on these little things that it can do.
Yeah.
If I want to do everything, I'll just get a computer.
Yeah.
But I think when you have a smaller number of people, you can do more workshops. You can
Yeah, I
do,
mean, this is something, actually, I'll throw this to Mike in a second because he's kind of spearheading our badge this year. Because it's so small, we're doing an FPGA badge this year, which
Mhm.
is a really kind of new for like many people.
new for everybody.
Yeah, really, it is.
Statistically, it's new for everybody.
Right.
Like no one knows what an FPGA is. Like, what?
So
Yeah.
the badge is an FPGA badge, and because it's such a small conference, we have the freedom to run multiple workshops that are beginner workshops, like getting to Blinky. And I'll just throw it to you, Mike, because you know much more about this.
Yeah, so Sprite TM, Jeroen Domburg, who is at Espressive, but is my favorite hacker in the entire world, has spoken at maybe every one of our conferences or pretty close to it.
Everyone, yeah.
Yeah, and it's always just an amazing thing. And he emailed in like January, is like, I would like to do a badge, and it should be an FPGA. It should have all these amazing features to just rattle them off. And other people had suggested FPGAs, and I was like, oh, the bar is so high for that. Like manufacturing's difficult, and you have to build so much more of the firmware and software. But if anybody can do it, he can. And Sophie and I both have one of the first prototypes, and I'm very excited. If we end up with software running on it, I will be way more excited than I am right now.
I'll be really excited to get to Hello World this week.
Yes, but we have time. We have time.
You have to change your mind. You're like, everything's running at the same time. What the fuck?
Well,
Like,
there's also
Yeah.
a spectrum. I think if you go to a Hackaday Supercon and your badge doesn't work, that's okay. But if you go to DEF CON, I think they're a little bit more like a gift item now. Brian, you've been following the badge life world for a bit, and I think you recently.
do you know anything about
Do you
this
know anything
stuff?
about badges?
You know what?
About badges. So you've been keeping an eye on what's happening in the badge world from DEF CON.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian made one of the
Very
more
reticent.
popular badges
Yeah.
last year.
So you had a badge.
And I assume you burnt out. That's why you didn't get one this year?
Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, hold on. Let me find it here. Yeah, so this thing, right? And-
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a dumb terminal badge. Like that's it. Oh wait. Hold on. I'm gonna try something here.
But you,
Hold on.
okay.
Stuck. Wait. Okay. That's too far.
Okay, we're going traveling.
There's literally a VT100 like right there.
That's cool.
Anyway.
But you build badges in previous. I mean, like you don't have to build a badge every year. I mean, even Joe Grant skipped a year. So what badges have you done before?
Let's see. We did the Mr. Robot thing. We had the Tindy. This is a high watermark for a while, but we have the multicolor Tindy guy.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. We just made like 2,000, 3,000 little Hackaday pins.
Yeah.
And
2000.
Yeah.
2,000 of the Tindy guys. They're not the David Bowie.
No,
But
This
yeah.
one.
There's another one that I'm hoping to get ready for Supercon, which is literally the most complex board I've ever seen. Because it's too much.
And how does it's you've not that you've changed directions, but you were a writer for a really long time, and now you're doing this engineering. How does that mesh? How does philosophically you think your brain has encompassed both writing for Hackaday for a while and now moving to doing hardware design? Did you learn stuff from doing Hackaday? Are you more sympathetic to people who post projects? What have you learned? What's your
The key thing is that you need to understand things fast, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like right now, I was talking to somebody about for Supercon, the badge life wall. So we're going to have a literal wall of shitty add-on connectors, right? And it's just a giant PCB, but you need to go through, how do you get the power? Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot of power. So we're just going to use a computer power supply. Well, oh crap. How do you do
to load it? Yeah, it's not as easy.
Now all of a sudden they're doing a museum installation.
There's a
And
lot
it's
of
like, well, what if someone unplugs it? How does it start up? What if someone touches it? Okay, we have to put it behind glass.
Yeah.
Working on?
Yeah. So you just need to understand things fast. And I think if you do when you take it that way, there's really no difference between engineering and writing.
Yeah, you have to quickly absorb a lot and then be able to synthesize something based on what you've learned.
And also be able to get into that part of your brain where you can focus for longer than 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So Caleb, what do you do? Because I see you on your Instagram and your tweets. You're making something really interesting, but then you have to go write about it. How do you switch gears like that? Because it's sometimes challenging.
That's actually been the key to my career. I'm not diagnosed with anything, but I have kind of an ADD tendency where I can't focus on anything for too long. And I think a lot of people do. I'm not saying I'm special in any way, but luckily my career has been benefited from that. in that I can bounce from, topic to topic to topic to, making something, to writing about it, to editing video, and back and forth. And that seems to keep me sane. So, if you just kind of harness that inability to focus, you can pull some productive stuff out of it. I procrastinate by getting stuff done that aren't the thing I want to do.
Yeah, I found rebelling against things like, I'm frustrated with this project, so I'll show you project's not working out, and then go to the other one. It is hard sometimes. This is something that happened to me after I retired from Make to help Lemore with Adafruit. I can't write about this industry the same way because I'm connected to an electronics company. So even if we're working on something that I know is going to work out and it's going to be great, I can't do the why Feather won and it's here to stay. I wrote this article on Make called Why Arduino won, why it's here to stay. It has nothing to do with the company, has nothing to do with the shape of the board. It's why this approach and philosophy for electronics worked out. I can't really write that article because I think Python's going to work out pretty well. Mike just had a thing about a MicroPython badge, and I quoted Mike on Hackaday because it's a big deal. It's MicroPython is looking pretty good for electronics. If I say stuff like that now, it's always going to be subject rightfully to well, of course you're going to say that because you're working on that. So it's like that scene in Blade Runner where Deckard says it's just business, and Rachel is I am the business. You can't really write about some of the stuff if you're that deeply connected to it. And I try to. We have an editorial, principles on Adafruit, but no matter what, we're an electronics site. So if we're writing about something, even if we're writing about quote competitors, that's one of the harder things. So I'm a little jealous of Caleb and Mike, Brian, and Sophie because you get to kind of do whatever you want, and no one says well, you're in the pocket of big
Adafruit. Make gets that a lot. We get that accusation a lot, and it is kind of a gray area because we do have lots of sponsors. But that was something I did love about Hackaday during that period. We didn't have a single sponsor. All we had was Google ads, and we didn't make much money on that. Yeah. And so, I remember we got a couple of cease and desists. One we took down because Jason didn't want to deal with it. But usually we could just be no, go away. And we could be rambunctious and annoying and kind of, rebellious in a way that I haven't been able to be since. Just because there wasn't much on the line. I mean, we didn't have sponsors.
You're I got $5 in Google AdWords.
I do think folks probably get treated so badly in life and online that they're just so skeptical of everything. Yeah. So if there's a Raspberry Pi post on a site, you're part of Raspberry Pi and you're just pushing Raspberry Pi because you're somehow connected to ARM or Broadcom. It's no. And it's I feel bad for people because they can't enjoy stuff. They have to have shields up all the time. And probably a lot of stuff out there is,
I think that's a distraction though. People find a reason to dislike something so that they don't actually have to do the work.
Yeah, that's true.
That might be it. Okay, so one thing, when Brian was showing some stuff, so Hackaday also has Tindy. Who wants to take that? How did Tindy...
Me and Mike and 3 other people were in Boston, right? Mike, we were in Boston when the news came through. You were there. I think we had...
I don't know. I remember being in San Francisco and Emil, is that his name?
Yeah.
Emil emailed me and we had a call and he said, I'm running out of runway and I really love this site and I just can't bear to see it not go on. And then I connected him with Alec, and I think that's the last I remember until we heard that they were coming on board.
Yeah, I got the same email from Emil. He's at Netflix, I think, still. And he's like, do you want to buy... Oh, he's not on Netflix. I can remember. I think that's where he went afterwards. But he's going, okay, never mind.
I think he's in Spain selling watches.
That's fine. That's exactly a good point.
Pretty much Netflix.
But talk about another site that has a really great origin story, right? I mean, he just put himself into that to try and get everyone in to have a level playing field to list their products in, to people who were going to accept something that wasn't in a case and was made to be hacked and tinkered with. And I love that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Tindy, that was one of the things that helped us too, because a lot of people were like, I want to sell my stuff on the Adafruit site. And we're like, you know what? There's like 4 customers. So there was Etsy, and it wasn't really appropriate. And I don't think Etsy was even letting electronics in at the time. And so there wasn't.
Now they're letting in everything.
Now they'll let it. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Etsy.
I listed you earlier,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh,
so.
thank you.
Yeah. And Tindy filled that void where if you're a manufacturer or you just want to put some stuff out there,
Right.
and a lot of times if someone has a successful Tindy, eventually they might want to scale up more, and they're like, hey, Adafruit, and that's maybe when we'll buy like 100 from them and put it in our store or something like that. But we usually say, hey, see how it does there first. And then like have good documentation.
That's good advice,
and if they're like, we're stuck with documentation. Well,
beta
Hackaday.io
customers
or Instructables or
Yeah.
Right. It's a good way to test the market. Too.
Yeah, we do that a lot. People say like, oh, I have this like really specialized like robot control, and I'm like, wow, that's like really specialized. This is a good Tindy option. We'll blog about it and we'll say, hey, folks, check out this cool thing, but it might not make sense for to unleash like hundreds of thousands of Adafruit customer on this. There's one person who's like, hey, it does a robot.
Also, I don't think people are trained how to run companies. Like, you could be a really good engineer, but a terrible business person, or a great business person, terrible engineer. Like, it's hard.
Has nothing to do with each other. Totally separate. So you're saying it was Emil and who?
I think Emil was the founder, and Julia Grace, who is she ran engineering.
Okay.
And I forgot where she went now. But.
All right. So then,
Mike, you were going to say something?
So you said,
yeah, it's our. Oh, sorry. It's our colleague, Jasmine Brackett at Supplyframe now, who's been just cranking on Tindy for a long time. And she's done amazing things in really like listening to the sellers who are the ones that design the hardware and are listing it and making sure that the site's responsive to their needs. Like if you ever go to any events and Jasmine's there's always awesome Tindy meetups. I think we're going to have a big Tindy event at Hackaday Super Conference this year. And so she's totally a fun person. If you're ever interested in what Tindy's all about, you should totally get in contact with Jasmine. The other thing is that that Twitter account, the Tindy Twitter account, it has it'll ping with the new products, which is a great way to just see the weird, crazy stuff
cool.
that's out there.
RSS feed on Twitter.
All right, so I want to switch gears a little bit, and like maybe you can talk about your article that you did today, and maybe some of the. I have it pulled up here. Maybe some of the stats. So how many articles? How many days? What's been going on the site?
Yeah. So the crazy thing about Hackaday is that the writers and editors are really just a small part of it. It's the community that's doing the projects and talking about the awesome stuff that really matters. And so looking at this, having 34,000 articles over the last 5,477 days is awesome. I think that metric of 903,114 comments is incredible. I did check that multiple times because it's like 26 comments per article. And if you go on there, sometimes we'll be talking about concepts or like things that companies had done way in the past. And more often than not, you'll see someone pop up that was like, oh, hey, I was on that engineering team. That was really awesome. There was an article a couple years ago about putting pictures on the die on when they're making new silicon. And somebody popped in from an article like 2 years ago and said, oh, hey, I was the one who did the bicycle picture on that silicon die. And so I love having like the hive mind of Hackaday and just seeing how that changes over the years. So with this article, we tried to look back at what technology was like in 2004 when Phil started the site and how much better we have things now. At some point, I talk about a civilized age coming in, because if Caleb, if you think about those articles we used to cover when I was new back in 2009, it was like a WRT 54G router on top of, whatever. Like that was what you put on everything because you didn't have a Raspberry Pi and you didn't have an easy way to connect it to the internet. And it was difficult to get microcontrollers cheaply and easily at first. And I just think all around across the board, it's amazing what you can build in an afternoon today. And that just wasn't possible 15 years ago. And that's kind of what the article's about.
One thing I miss about those days, and I'm not saying those were the good old days or anything. One thing I miss is the aesthetics. Every project looked different. And now we have beautiful boards coming out. Everybody's putting out beautiful boards, but there's some uniformity now that's just a little bit different. Anyway, go on.
Brian, what are some of your good memories from those bad old days before Raspberry Pi and ESP8266?
Everybody has a 3D printer now, which that's good or bad because everything's 3D printed.
Yeah.
But what about everything machine tool? Like this guy just built this robot arm on a gantry on his desk because he could, and then hooked it up to computer vision to like sort stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's no good way to do like here's a 15-year celebration of Hackaday, and then let's talk about the technology. But there are things like, remember when there was all the $200 3D printer Kickstarters? That came in. Remember when there was the MakerBot clones? Remember MakerBot went from open source to closed source? Like all this stuff that we just lived through the last 15 years. And for 3D printers, just because Brian mentioned this, like they're around a lot, but I think it's now settled on people who will actually use them. I think a lot of people got them and they're like 3D printed Yoda head, and then that was it. And that's a little unfortunate.
And then it would break.
And then it would break, and they're like, 3D printers suck. But now if you kind of like, you have the low end ones and you kind of will use it for things, and then there's high end ones where you'll send it off somewhere. But I don't think there's as much like, okay, like this is going to be like the replicator from Star Trek and I'm going to see what I can do. And then you see a bunch of stuff like that seems to have gone away. For sure. Not only in the market, but I don't hear people like, oh my God, a 3D printer.
It's like, I think there's more uniformity, but it's not necessarily bad in some cases. Like for example, like, yes, everyone is using the same Debian-based single board Raspberry Pi like Linux computers, but frankly, it was impossible. Everybody had a different WRT router and a different version of, and there was a fork in Light. I don't remember the name of it, but like with Open WRT, like it was impossible to replicate anything because everyone was using these weird ass forks. Or like you'd have a 3D printer and you could only print, like the files would only work on one printer. Now there's more uniformity, but it means like people can start with something that works. Like everyone sort of agrees, like, hey, here's like the basics that we're going to start with, rather than.
So it takes forever to master, but it's easier to get started in doing something.
And it may be more uniform on the boards now, but thanks to all the 3D printers that are out there, now we're seeing people who aren't necessarily as technically minded getting in and building things, and we get all the diversity that comes with that, where what they build around the circuits is now so much bigger and crazier and cooler and diverse than it used to be.
Yeah, the thing that you mentioned before about the person coming into the comments a couple of years later is like, oh, I worked on the silicon die for that. That was one of the ideas behind Hackaday, is if I casted a big enough net, I'll eventually find a lot of people that they worked on something, couldn't talk about it for years, and they're retired now and they could start talking about it. Right? Because what happens, there's so many industries that you can't talk about anything. So an Adafruit blog will do like a retro hardware thing, and someone's like, oh yeah, I worked on the original Newton, and they were at Apple. Like you can never talk about what you do, but it's like 30 years later they could start to talk about it. So we're starting to see like people come out of the woodwork. There's also like some of these companies are out of business, so they can't even sue. Like if you were to start leaking some of these schematics out, or like I had to wait a while. I have all the videos of the Curio, the humanoid robot. So Sony stopped making it, and I just waited and waited. It was out of advertising. I waited like 5 years, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm posting up all these videos because they never wanted to show them booting up. They look like little old people and they fall over and stuff. It's not Sony brand. And so it's really neat to get some of that behind the scenes stuff. But if I did that, I would have been, destroyed from orbit by like a very nice Sony. And that's how it goes sometimes. And later on at Make, I did an article, if you're going to kill it, open source it. There's a lot of things that weren't open sourced that I think people are starting to do now. Thankfully. A couple other things that happened. Bunny was so early on everything. He did the Chumby. It was an iPhone before the iPhone came out.
He did the Chumby board, which was the first. It was a Raspberry Pi pre-Raspberry Pi.
It was the Raspberry Pi before the Raspberry Pi. And
it was great. You could do I2C, sensors.
Bunny's on Hackaday all the time. Every single thing he does, we always stop whatever weird thing he is going to come up with. He's like, I found a way to decrypt HDMI, and maybe someone's going to, take me to court. But it was so complex and weird. I feel bad for him because no one really cared. So it's just like, oh, neat. Like, well, it's the NETV. Like it does something amazing, but like you can't explain it. So it's like,
he's like that whale that has like a different tone. So like it doesn't have any friends. It's just singing alone in the ocean.
But in the last 15 years, iPhone came along. There was things that were just like the Raspberry Pi. Didn't quite happen.
Fast internet.
Fast internet is here.
Everyone can do video, YouTube.
Wi-Fi was still kind of early. It was kind of like a fun thing you did. Now it's like everything's wireless. Okay, so that's the past. So I want to talk about the future. I'm going to talk about my to-do list, and let's see how we did. And then we'll
Do you
talk
want to
about
email Peter Rojas? And
No, this was my email. It was from PT at Hackaday. It was April 5th. I
This is
sent it to
Jason
Jason,
Kirkman,
and I
yeah.
CC'd Peter Rojas and Brian Alvey. Brian was the programmer behind a lot of the weblogs. I think I don't know. He's the unknown guy. He's like the fifth Beatle in that. And I said, okay, hi. All lowercase, by the way.
It is.
After the launch, I'll see what I can do for these on my to-do list. Hackaday store for hackers.
Which is now Tindy.
And Tindy.
Yeah.
Done.
Hackaday desktop calendar, a printed virtual device, this day in hacking resource.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm using the Adafruit calendar actually that you sent me.
We
a
got an
long time
Adafruit
ago.
calendar, yeah. Hackaday events.
We-
One of the ideas was you would get free attendance or discounts if you sent a hack in.
yes, we
Right?
do. We
Yeah.
do that for bring a hack.
Mike, is that a calendar?
Check.
Yes. That's my Hackaday calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Hackaday badges, hack scouts, physical and virtual badges.
Oh yeah, you did those though. You had the Hackaday sewn badge. It's in
Yeah.
the store. Yeah.
Also, DIY.org did that. They got acquired by Little Bits. Little Bits just got acquired by Sphero.
Yeah.
Hacker Scouts came along while
They
I was
got
at Make,
sued.
and they got sued by the Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah, they learned you can't use the word scouts.
Scouts is one of those weird trademarks that the Department of Agriculture owns, along like with Smokey the Bear and 4-H, that is way different than every other trademark. So basically, you can't call something Scouts. They found out the hard way.
What a weird word.
Super weird.
It's very weird.
Hackaday subscription box.
Adabox.
Yeah.
Adabox,
Also,
yeah.
there's Hacker Boxes. I'm a subscriber to Hacker Boxes, and they kind of use the Hackaday aesthetic.
Oh, really?
This is a
Yeah, I'll
spells.
show you. Yeah. That's
Do you want me to
cool.
grab one?
Hackaday radio show podcast.
Hey, we started that this year. We just
Whoa.
recorded number 34 this morning. Yeah.
Check that off.
Woohoo.
Hackaday bounty, hacking for good.
You
That's
did that for Connect, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Hackaday didn't, but that was only because of Jason.
Yeah. There's a few of these. So
The bounty thing comes up on Hackaday.io periodically. People will
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, we
Yeah.
should do a bounty."
Yeah, but hacking for good. That's pretty much the hacking
yeah, I put
prize,
bounty.
right?
I put bounty
But
because I
this
knew
year-
Jason or someone be
yeah.
like, "Oh, what are you doing?" But it was hacking for good. Like, what is there something that's closed source that could be open source? So my ideas were like voting machines, medical equipment,
Yeah.
some stuff like that. Hackaday archive for electronics. When companies go out of biz, Hackaday archives and publishes schematic source manuals.
Hmm.
So I think that was like way back machine style, but
Mhm.
for Hackaday. Hackaday collector cards for hackers and/or certain projects and chips. So it would be like a baseball card.
Mhm.
I would not do that idea because one thing I also think about. So I think it's bad to worship individuals too much because you never know what's going to happen later. So like there are folks in the hacker scene, like it probably at one time it would have been good to have like a hacker baseball card and like way not good later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like Jared the Subway guy. Like
Yeah.
you don't want to build your whole sandwich business around it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think we're seeing just in the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of people become unmasked.
yeah. So I think it's a better idea probably to really celebrate the project, celebrate the people, but maybe don't put them on a pedestal
Don't
too
idolize
much.
them,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's probably not going to work out. Hackaday Hacker Museum and a hacking section in museums.
We had last year, no, we didn't quite do that, but at Supercon, we had a badge life exhibit for the first time. And that mostly because they were almost all my badges from like all
Yeah.
the years. It felt like
You have a collection. Well, you're the curator.
It felt like a badge museum. Actually, Magenta Strongheart curated it and put together the exhibit. It was awesome.
Okay.
So
I
that
wish my
our-
name was Magenta Strongheart, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's an
It's
amazing name.
right? Yeah.
One of the people who works with Adafruit, her name is Nemesis. Really, her
I know
name.
her.
That's of course
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
met her,
introduced you to her.
yeah.
I'm just, and that's a real. I was like, that's so cool. I wish my name was Nemesis. Anyways,
She'll fuck you up.
yeah. So that was I wrote all these August 5th, 2004. Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad, right?
Yeah.
Over 15 years
Yeah.
ago.
Before it even got off the ground, right?
There wasn't even a website.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
okay. So next up, the future. I'm going to do a little bit of a round robin, as they say.
Okay.
I'll start with Caleb. Caleb, you're working on Make stuff, so you could probably do some of these things. Some of you can't, but generally speaking, what would you like to see on a Hackaday site, a Hackaday-like effort? You can even say things that you would like to do at Make. What are you looking forward to in the next like short term, and then let's imagine 15 years from now?
We'll stick to Hackaday to keep it clean and simple. Hackaday is I worry sometimes when I look at Hackaday that it will fall to the inevitable broadening that was started a long time ago, and it will like kind of fracture and stuff, all in the name of growth. And I worry that it's gonna get watered down, or whatever term you want to use, too much. But I think there are things that you could add even beyond what it has now, like learning paths for people who, if you want to get into hacking old robots or old equipment, here are the 10 things you need to learn to be able to get started. So if I saw Bunny's Xbox stuff and I was like, that's incredible, I want to be like him when I grow up, how do I get started doing that? Right now, it's incredibly easy to go find out, how to make a lightsaber, but how to hack into an old, antiquated piece of hardware and learn how to make it move, that's a little bit more difficult. And that's something that I think, these different kind of learning paths for some of that stuff that is really unique to this group, I think that would be really interesting to see integrated into Hackaday.
Okay. All right. Brian, you got any things on your wish list for the short term in the next 15 years of online electronic sharing and more?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to say the opposite of Caleb, where Caleb says that it needs to fracture. I see the future as dwindling, because if Hackaday posts about hey, let's make a single board computer of a 6502. Well, that's literally 50 years old, and 12-year-olds now, if we want to get to 12-year-olds, dude, like that was old 12 years ago. They want Fortnite. So I see the main obstacle as attrition. And to have Hackaday go forward, you would need to expand the audience. So
more things to bring in more people, because eventually these people are going to die.
People die.
Yeah.
Well, it turns into like ham radio, where it's like they're just dying, and they're just like, we don't understand why, but we can't understand why, but we can't do anything.
Also, the last 15 years, how did ham radio miss out on kind of the maker movement? They were definitely separate from. There's a lot of timing things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was the same time as Hackaday, but it's a very different, separate community, and there wasn't a lot of things to bring people together.
Morse requirement.
They got rid of that.
Yeah.
They did, but that's not the problem.
No, but when?
There's a
I got
similar
Morse code
parallel.
at least when I was 16. So the Morse code requirement's been gone for like 20 years.
But it's also a perception. Like if folks still think there's a Morse code requirement, then it's like, well, I don't want to do it because like that's crazy. Like
I don't think that would be a deterrent, though.
That's not the issue.
Sometimes.
I mean, it agreed it should be gone, but that's been gone for over 20 years. That's not the issue anymore.
2001.
I think it's
Yeah.
Well, it's also, it's different in the sense from my perspective. When I've gone to like ham events, it's people using old equipment to talk to each other. It is not people designing equipment.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a social event.
Yeah. And one
It's
of the
actually
things,
like Fortnite.
and one of the things in the ham radio world, like it is slightly older audience, and there's a lot of like just talking about politics on ham radio, and I think a lot of us are escaping from that right now. Like, the only thing I don't want to do is talk to some old dude about politics right now. Like, still do not want to do it. I don't want to do it. It's like I will watch nature shows. I will binge on Netflix. I just do not want to talk about politics with some old guy. And I don't want the radio to help me with that. Yeah. Okay, so for Brian, you want to kind of bring in more people. One side story. Dean Kamen told me the story. He hangs out with like Boeing executives and all that, and he's always flying in their planes and he's all fancy. But he said one of the problems that the Boeing CEO said is like all the people who work on GPS satellites and all the people who work on airplanes, they're old and they're dying. And we can't get enough people in aerospace because if you're really good, you're probably going to go be a quant or work at Google or go work at Facebook because like there's just
it's
more
way easier
more money.
to make way more money, and leave at 5 o'clock and the job is a lot easier. It's freaking hard to be an electromechanical anything.
Yeah,
or
you're
to
dealing
do something with
reliability.
hardware.
Facebook will give you a mango lassi, they'll massage you at your desk,
Yeah.
they'll do all these things for you. And you're not going to have to like make an airplane that could like potentially crash. You're like, oh, I'm just going to like
So
monetize
basically,
web pages.
people are just lazy.
Yeah, well,
It's not, but all people are facing. Like, why should you?
I think
I'm saying that with this.
I think
Why take a job that is risky, pays poorly, you're poorly treated when you could do the opposite? I don't
Yeah.
think I would blame nobody for that.
so.
Yeah,
So
I don't know
I'll,
about being poorly treated.
I'll say I agree with Caleb and I agree with Brian
Mhm.
because I think you need to do both. And I have my little my to-do list for the next 15 years. All right, next up, we're going to go to Mike and then Sophie. Mike, what do you want to do the next 15 years?
Well, so near term, I do think that we have an entire generation growing up that was a mobile first generation who have consumed their content with HD video streaming. And there's a lot of great hacks out there that are that. And I really enjoy those. But I have a deep love for the written word. I think you can learn a lot deeper topics a lot faster. You know, like I read a lot faster than I watch videos. And so finding a way to attach into an audience of young engineers who are really interested in things on videos and having them appreciate and understand a long, deep read into a topic is, I think, key to Hackaday's near-term future. One of the things, as far as 15 years from now, that you said, Phil, was talking about people that worked at companies where they couldn't talk about what they were working for. And 15 years from now, I would like to see this crowd of engineers that are growing up right now challenge that and change that in their own companies. And so if you think about people that are 15 years old right now that are doing their own projects at home and they're reading about other people's projects, they're posting about theirs, they're talking about theirs, I hope that they'll realize the value in putting that idea out there and getting as many minds on it so that in 15 years when they are running an electronics division at a company, they can say, you know what, we need to be as open source as we can on this. We need to connect with our customers directly, you know, kind of like Adafruit does, and say, you know, what are your needs here? How is this product working for you? And just being more open in general, because I think everybody benefits from the people that are learning to the people who are, you know, far onto their job and close to retirement.
That's excellent. So one of the things that we've seen is, and I think it's a lot your fault, Lamore, which is good. The expectation is I buy electronics, I should get all the code. It should be in an open source license. It should be on GitHub. There should be a guide and a tutorial, and there should be a community and resources. And so everyone.
When I started Adafruit, by the way, it was completely different. You would not, when you bought a kit, they would email you the schematics. You couldn't share them. There was a forum, and you'd have to get a registration code. You couldn't. It was a private forum, and there was usually no code. You would get a binary or hex file, if you wanted to burn it in. There's no release source code. And this was very common for kits. There was no openness. It was like, now it's totally normal.
I've seen the electronic suppliers out there that really get this. So DigiKey jumped in feet first, and they do lots of stuff in the community. Lots of other electronic companies or distributors don't. And you can see a big gap starting. Like, people have go-to places because they're like, oh, you get me, you understand me. I see you in the community. I also, when I buy something, it has a link to the source code. And it starts to work.
Software isn't like 10 gigs and requires a password and
an NDA or something like that. Yeah.
Emails and
So I think a lot of that's going to happen. I think it's going to change from the inside. Okay, what else you got, Mike?
Oh, I think that's it.
Okay, Sophie, you're up next.
I would like also to see more avenues for education. And I think specifically I'd like to see more ease of getting electronic engineers into jobs at companies, which would pretty much involve those companies that I was complaining but not naming with their 10 gig software downloads and lack of information, to actively be training people. Because I think in 15 years, we are hopefully going to be a fully remote work society. I mean, with the way that resources are going, we're not going to be traveling in the same way that we do now.
Yeah.
So people are going to be remote. And
also, who wants to go through the airports? Like, it's never fun. It's never gonna. Oh, you do?
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. You're the one.
All right. Well, you know what? Then if it was just you, they'd be fine. But it's not. It's everyone.
It's everyone, right.
Everything else sucks.
Yeah, but I mean, I would like to see that become much more of the norm, where companies that are not open source are willing to share, like, basically like little apprenticeships of getting up to speed in this field.
More collaboration, basically.
Yeah. And I also think in 15 years, we're already seeing the death of some of the smaller colleges.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that in 15 years, all college will be online, and that's a really good opportunity.
Yeah, the debt crisis for student loans hasn't hit yet the way the housing crisis hit, and it probably will. Might be next year. Yeah. Who knows? Election year, you never know. But eventually, all these loans aren't going to work out,
and you can't bankrupt out of them.
You can't. Yeah, it's too big to ever pay back. Too big to fail. Okay, so distributed learning, distributed workforce, and lots of places for people to have a pathway.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I think it's possible too that, right now, like we were talking about before, how software, it's easier to be a software engineer than anything else. Like you're treated better than being a mechanical or an electrical or a chemical or one of these kind of other
the competition is very high.
Yeah. And therefore a lot of people are going into software engineering, but it also may mean that software engineering becomes saturated and a lot of people are going to start coming back towards some of these other things, especially as there's a need for, this is not really so much electrical, but in nuclear and chemical and energy engineering.
A lot of that is becoming software based. There is no such thing as a biologist who doesn't know Python. So you can't have that anymore.
But don't you think that software at some point will be a tool rather
than? I think it's getting there.
Yeah.
I think there will be like combo. Like you will have to get a minor in computer science when you get your chemical.
Yeah, if you're a biologist, you're probably going to use Jupyter notebooks now.
Yeah.
This is the new normal.
Yeah.
Mechanical engineering is all CAD.
Then maybe that isn't necessarily a partial CS degree.
Yeah.
You think it's just like you just take classes in it. You're like, oh, this is part of it. Just like you have a writing requirement no matter what your science degree.
And like when you do in electronic engineering, you do math modules and everything, but you don't necessarily have a math degree.
It's true.
Yeah.
Lamar got to interview the former president, and she said, can you please do something instead of just a foreign language requirement? Can you do a computer language requirement too? And he's like, yeah, we'll look into that. It's not going to happen, but that was one of the questions that she had for Obama when she got to interview him. Was like, that would be really useful, because I think that's one of the things that if everyone had computer science as just part of, you're going to learn about chemistry today. Well, you still have to do some coding. It's just it's not the focus of it. It's just part of the things that you do. Okay, so you have an educational goal. All right, Lamar, what do you want to see in the next 15 years?
I never ran Hackaday, so I don't know.
Well, that was on Hackaday.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah,
I think
you're the subject of the site for a lot of things.
I think we're going to see a lot of internationalization of hacking and engineering. I think we're going to see a lot more. I think that right now the internet is kind of divided. Like the people on Hackaday are very English speaking. It's very American, Western European focused. I think we're going to see possibly like a Chinese clone of Hackaday, which would be really cool.
Yeah.
Hackaday TikTok.
Hackaday TikTok, or whatever. I think there'll be multiple different groups, and hopefully they can, with translation software, they can team up. But I'm seeing like a really amazing engineering coming out of China, but it's not getting to American sites. They just don't know where to see it.
We just opened the Hackaday Prize to China this year. And so the 10 finalists from the Hackaday Prize China are going to be a part of the global prize.
Yeah.
So we're trying to integrate that.
I think there's some political issues as well, but I think eventually, because it's like, the cool stuff I'm seeing is very anonymous. Like they're not, they don't have their real names attached, which I can understand. But I think that's going to be kind of in the next 5 to 10, 15 years as we see economies come up. Like I think we're seeing a lot more Indian natives, nationalists coming in and doing hacking. I'm seeing a lot more of that. I'm seeing more people from the Middle East. I'm seeing people from Asia. I'm seeing people from Northern Africa, which I think is kind of neat. It's like it's broadening beyond just like, okay, either you're on the East Coast or the West Coast.
Yeah, and we're seeing different kind of projects.
And different projects, it's cool stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the other reasons I made Hackaday is, I grew up like a lot of people. I watched, hacker movies, and like there's good people that can win in the end, and like the politicians are the ones, and like all of us hackers are going to get together and we're going to show them, or the scientists get together. We're in space, and like, yeah, Russia and the US are at war together, but the scientists are going to still talk to the aliens and save the day, and we're going to get world peace. So I hope that's what happens, and I hope we don't get stuck with like, we can't work with this country because we're currently with a tariff war. We're not friends with them this week because of a politician. So I would like to see us all come together because of the things we want to build together, and maybe ignore
What's
a
cool
lot
is
of the
like,
noise.
it's neat. Like I look on, because I'm reading like these the Chinese websites and looking at their schematics, and it's like, it's neat because like schematics are like universal. Like it's like, I don't, I went into Google Translate to see what they're posting about, but then I can look at this. Oh, I see what you're doing with your design, because it's like, you luckily came up with a language
Universal.
to communicate electronics that was not
Okay,
language.
so here's my
language.
list, and we're going to get everyone out of here.
Okay.
So thanks for hanging in this long. So this is my list. This is good for anybody. You don't have to be Hackaday. You don't have to be an Adafruit. You don't have to be a Hackster Instructables or a DigiKey or anyone. This is just stuff that I think is good, but I'm going to focus this on Hackaday, the website, since that's what we're talking about. So one of the things I'd like to be able to do, this is my short-term list, is subscribe to a topic, because a lot of people use newsletters now because the internet is just terrible. So you just put in what topic you want to see. And after 10 posts on that topic, maybe you get a digest or something. You can also subscribe by keyword. There's tags and stuff like that. Also, in Hackaday.io, you can't really do that. It'd be nice to be able to get basically like newsletterify the entire site, because we've noticed there's tons of people that consume based on the written words, kind of something that Mike was saying, but they get things in an email format, and it's hyper personalized because there's so much stuff. So I think that would solve the broadening and also the narrowing. So you get your very narrow focused stuff. There's just 10 posts. Like we have people who only want to read stuff when I write about machine learning. That's it. They don't want anything else from the Adafruit site. So they can subscribe to an RSS feed. But eventually we're like, well, we should do a newsletter around that. So we started a new site, adafruitdaily.com, because we never wanted to get accused of like using someone's store information. So it's a completely separate site. That's why we did that. I think Hackaday could do something like that, where it's all newsletters.
Hackaday a day?
Oh yeah, Hackaday a day. Yeah. The other one is, I think since people put their stuff on Tindy, I think in addition, when you upload something to Tindy and you say, this is my product, I think Hackaday, Supplyframe, Tindy could have their own ad network where you get credits, where you can advertise what you just put in there. Because one of the biggest questions I always get is, how do I market my electronics?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, did you submit it to sites? Did you do all this stuff? But Tindy has that built in. The documentation on Hackaday.io, the possibility of it getting covered on Hackaday. But also, if you're willing to put your stuff on there, I think you should get like ad credits on.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because you have all like, I don't run an ad blocker on Hackaday because,
There's actually been some tests from the ad ops team at Supplyframe to do that. Instead of running house ads when we have them, they've been running some Tindy ads that are actually featuring seller products.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it's a test run. Hopefully something great will come from it.
Yeah, and I think that's a way for people to become little business people, and they also get a chance to market their products, and that's the reason they're putting it on Tindy, a wider audience. Other thing is, underneath each blog post, we did this with the Adafruit blog. I tried to do this with Make, and I think Make has this now, or at least the last time I was working on it, where when you look at a blog post, it suggests the I/O projects that are kind of like it. It's called machine learning, but not really. Like Contextly is a service that does that. There's other ways to do this. But being able to do that on the I/O site as well. If you're looking at an I/O project, it has blog posts that have kind of something to do with what you're seeing. Maybe it's looking for products or specific components, but it's bringing that content in both places. Yeah. So publish, you do something once and you're able to see it in lots of different places. A little bit more forward-looking stuff. A buy one, hack one for underserved communities, or you find a good sponsor. It's like
your local schools, also good.
Yeah, where if you purchase something on the Hackaday store, let's say it would, I'll use Adafruit examples because I'm here. Like a Circuit Playground Express, you buy one and it goes to like Black Girls Code or 4-H or Girls Code or something like that. Buy one, hack one type thing.
Like Tom's Shoes.
I love that.
Like Tom's Shoes, but for learning electronics and hacking. Yeah. Especially Americans, we like to do activism through buying shit.
Yeah.
So you have to have some for
that. That's it. Warby Parker too. Like those glasses.
Video show and tells. We've done the show and tell with Adafruit for a while. We've hired most of our amazing people because they've come on the show and tell. I would like to have a show and tell to watch besides the one we do. We've been doing it for like 10 years. So I think a video component to...
We use this, the StreamYard.
Yeah, we're doing this right now, but I think a video component...
No, I'm saying it's the same software.
So we at Make, we have 2 video series that are just launching right now that are kind of in that, which are makerspace tours and small maker business tours.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah, for the
Show and
hardware
tell, but
side-
it's their
We have to
business.
promote each other because
Yeah.
it's nobody else.
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
For the hardware side, like, so Kickstarter tried to do a live streaming thing because they had so many bad hardware Kickstarters. So they're like, oh, please, like, here's a video service. So they wanted people to like show what they're
Right.
doing throughout the build process. I think Hackaday could do that. I think you could be very specific, like videos of my workbench live.
Mhm.
You know, maybe it could be one editor and then find someone and just have that. I think easy API and syndication for creators. So we use the Hackaday API. The Hackaday IO API was pretty hard.
Yeah.
And there's no, well, yeah, I mean, I think, and we're the only one I think who did, like, we had it on a Pi portal
Yeah.
and we
I
had a
remember
really
that.
neat project
Yeah.
and a couple thousand people hit like so I can have
Like
it
I
live.
just want to see like any project on Hackaday that uses a feather because I want to promote that. And
Yeah.
like if the
So-
RSS feed is like a billion comments, I'm like I'm not going to see it. So
Well,
how do I?
IO doesn't have RSS feeds the same way as other stuff.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like there's no
So-
way to find
There's
those projects.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
but there is a way to find it.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
you're right. It is difficult.
Yeah, it's
and
really
we could
difficult.
improve on that. Yeah.
We did a jobs board that worked out. Make has a jobs board.
We have a jobs board, but and actually I would love to see a better jobs board.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see in general better jobs boards.
Yeah. I think if you can get people to post up their skills more
Yeah.
and put that in the job area and then companies to be really specific about what they want,
Mhm.
they're looking for the type of people that are reading Hackaday.
I also tell people like what kind of skills you should pick up if you want to get a job. It's like, oh, everyone's looking for
Yeah.
this type
Yeah.
of role. Great, I'm going to learn that. Good job.
You should actually put it in your resume at the bottom. I read Hackaday, just
Yeah.
in case, you know.
And then I just took a couple quick notes when you're all are chatting. Since you have a limited amount of space for Supercon, maybe if someone's been there a few times, they can't go 2 times in a row. They have to nominate someone to go because I think you'll end up cycling out.
That's a good trick. Otherwise, you get the same 10 people constantly, which is good, but it means
Yeah.
that
I mean, and
you
So
don't
let's
get
say
any.
if someone's gone to
flexibility.
Supercon a couple times in a row because there's limited space, 400 people.
Right.
It's like, hey,
And we do sell out.
yeah,
too.
you just
Yeah.
So you say, hey,
you've been here twice. You can't come, but you get to say who
Yeah.
does, and they can nominate a person.
Right.
So I think that might get a wider community and people that,
Definitely.
or like, who isn't here that should be
Yeah.
here?
Yep.
Um,
Kickstarter did something really nice last year, and they're going to do it again this year, which was to put forward some money to fund people to come
yeah.
who would not normally be able to come. Or
So that's just my list. Some of these are like long term, some of them are short term,
Mhm.
but that's my list of stuff, and that's free for everyone to
free ideas.
free ideas.
Worth every penny.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it. Does anyone have anything else before we call this 15-year celebration over?
One thing we tried ages ago that we failed at and we got rid of it that I still think could do very well on all of our sites is a question answer system, kind of like Stack Overflow,
Yeah.
right? Now you guys have a forum and you have customer support, so you're kind of off in your own thing. But Hackaday tried years and years ago. We had a question answer system that was built by the devs at Mahalo. So you could come on and you could ask, like, I have this router. Is there some way I can get a distribution on it, whatever? And other people could answer. And our downfall was that for some reason they shoehorned in some financial system into it for incentive, and it was real money.
Wow.
And the first week that it was running, we noticed the numbers didn't add up right. So they just killed it before it
Yeah.
became an amount of money that would cause a legal.
I think you have to be careful. Yeah, with money, it's just too.
Yeah.
It's a bad incentive system too, because people just game it, right? They'll say,
Yep.
I'll post a fake question, I'll fake
Yeah.
answer it, and now I get 10 cents, and they'll just do
I
that.
think that's one of the issues with a lot of these
Forever.
contest sites. You get a lot of
Yeah.
garbage entries.
Yeah, yeah. But I do think the community actively answering these specific questions has value beyond just a forum.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems like a difficult thing to get when you look at all the different platforms people go to for information. You know, they go to Twitter, they go to YouTube or whatever, and it gets buried. And I don't know. I think there's value there. And
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
people love Stack
Yeah.
Overflow. It's great for software, but it's not that. I've seen hardware come up once in a while, but it's not great. Like there's not a lot of activity
Yeah.
and not a lot of people really know what they're talking about, and it's kind of very hit or miss.
Yeah, like Edaboard,
I don't know
EDA
this.
board. I go there sometimes for electronics, and that's also really
I don't know of a single
Yeah.
place I would say is like here's a good question to answer.
All right.
for
Well, it sounds like an
electronics.
opportunity for someone. out
So there you
there.
go.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for doing this. I sent this out kind of the last second. and just like, I wonder who might be around. And thanks for
They're all around.
taking care of my skull child. Yeah, and not messing it up. Because like I still get emails. Well, I don't get I don't get as many emails as I used to. If someone had a bad experience, like maybe someone said something crummy in the comments, I used to get an email like, Phil, can you do something? I'm like, no, I can't do anything about it at all whatsoever, because they thought I still did stuff with the site. But I don't get those as much anymore, if ever. So I don't get. It's not my fault anymore.
Okay.
I don't know. They might be emailing one of you, but
Could be.
I think it's okay. But thanks for taking good care of it, and we'll see what happens. I guess 5 years from now, we'll do the 20.
The 20-year reunion.
The 21, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, I hadn't even thought that far ahead. That's crazy to think about. 20 sounds a lot more than 15.
Yeah.
20 sounds,
Scary.
yeah.
All
All
right.
right. Well, thanks everybody.
Okay, well,
This
thanks,
was so
everybody.
fun.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Caleb. And thank you, Sophie.
Thank you for hosting. It was fun.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.